bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready?
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50-plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go.
You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with on Birds 365. It is an undefeated Tuesday. I'm going to say that every day until the Eagles lose again. If the Eagles lose again. Here on Birds 365. Good to have you back, Johnny Mac.
Was that our first intimation towards 17-0? Was that the first one?
Yeah, kind of offhanded. Didn't even think of it that way. I'm just calling it undefeated Tuesday. They didn't make you fly to Seattle to get back to Philadelphia from Los Angeles?
No, straight through. As good as it can be, but when you're on a plane for 6 hours out, a little bit less coming back. But
hey, if it's nonstop, that's good. You take it any way you can get it.
Yeah.
Even if they're flying slow, that's okay. Better than stopping, getting off 2 hours, paying for overpriced airport food, having to wait for the next flight. Yeah, no.
That's one of the biggest scandals in the there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, but we're trying to lighten things up here. But yeah, I mean, They hold you hostage in airports, and boy, man, those prices, those are ballpark prices, maybe times two.
Yeah, when I went to the Philly game last week, and I'm going again tomorrow, I didn't realize how much a 12-ounce beer was these days. It's been a while since I actually paid for one.
How much is it? Because it's got to be way over $10, right?
Yeah. My daughter got one of those combination fruit juice drinks, whatever. I don't even know what the hell they are, but hers was probably only 10 ounces and mine was 12 ounces cans. Was over $30 for drinks.
Yeah, that's amazing.
30 and change.
By the way, hat tip to the Los Angeles Rams because they now join the Dallas Cowboys. They gave us some cocktails after the game. So
really?
After I was done the post-game show with the boys, I got to have a Bud Light in the press box as I sat down for 3 more hours. So
they're pouring out little barley and hops, huh? That's not too shabby.
Not bad.
Good on the Hollywood Rams. All right, and good for the Philadelphia Eagles to go to the Hollywood Rams. They win again. They're 5-0. A lot of good things happened in the game. They did a lot of good things. Once again, imperfect, and we'll nitpick a couple of the things that they need to, as players like to say these days, clean up. Always good to get a little cleanup in, and it's easier to clean up after a win than it is after a loss, and that's where the Eagles are exactly at. Comparing this win to their 4 other wins, John McMullen, best, one of the best, it's another game. How did you overall evaluate the Eagles from opening kick to final gun in their victory over the Rams?
Boy, that's an interesting question. Where would I rate it? You know what I rate it? A typical Eagles game, man. They just wore them down.
It's another 2023 Eagles game. Very similar.
I mean, man, at halftime I was thinking, all right, this is going to be a problem because they can't deal with Cooper Kupp, and the slot is this big issue, and they come out in the second half and they just wear people down. And I think it was Jalen Carter's sack on Matthew Stafford where it was the violent sack where Matthew Stafford was wanting a flag. And it was almost like, all right, I'm done. I'm done with this pass rush. And there were a couple times when you're there live, you can see Kupp had people beat downfield for big gains, and Matthew Stafford was just hurried and bad throws over the wrong shoulder, just not putting. And this is an accurate quarterback typically, but he was very uncomfortable. And at the third quarter, I have this giant scoreboard at SoFi Stadium. They had put up at the time. Matthew Stafford was getting the football out in 2.2 something seconds. I mean, he was not comfortable. And I think that really helped the secondary. And they completely shut him down. I mean, they had like 80, just over 80 yards in the second half. I mean, it was a dominant performance. And then offensively, they're people are going to complain about the red zone, and I get it. 2 of 6, and Nick said after the game 2 of 5 because they were just running out the clock at the end. Even that's not good enough, but they were in the red zone 6 times. The Rams were in the red zone once, 6 times, 454 yards again. They've been over 415 for 4 consecutive games. They've only done that 5 times in their history, Jody, and they did it last year, and now they've done it this year. I mean, this team is good, and all we can do is nitpick because they're just better than everybody else.
Than everybody they've played.
They're on paper, they're better. I mean, San Francisco's in the conversation, obviously, and people are going to say because they style pointed better. And I have no problem with people saying they're the better team in Kansas City in the Super Bowl. But I continue to say they outplayed them. They just made mistakes. No, I think they're better than everybody else. And I wish I didn't because it's more interesting to me when there's problems. They're so stinking good. And I'm sitting there. I'm telling you, Jody, at halftime, I'm like, all right, the Rams might sneak this game out. And then they just put their foot on their throat. And they do that each and every week. And we constantly talk about, where are we? 22 of 23, I think. 22 of 23 with Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback. I mean, I'm not a win-loss guy as a starting quarterback until it gets to that point. Like when you keep winning every single week in this league where everybody has these crappy games this year, with the exception of the Eagles, and they've had some crappy in San Francisco, but they'll have crappy games, and nobody's going 17-0, and I don't expect the Eagles to go 17-0, but they're just good. They're just really, really good.
They are undefeated, and we're down to just 2, and it's been that way for a couple weeks since them in San Francisco. And yeah, San Francisco has had more style points. And in truth, style points are meaningless. They're important in college football. They mean nothing in the NFL. The standings are the only thing that matters. So if you want to say the Eagles are tied for being the best team in the National Football League, I agree with you. They are. They're 2 undefeated team. It's them and San Francisco, 1 and 1A. Put them in whatever order you want. If you do want to go a little further inside, I think you have to say San Francisco has been more impressive to this point, plain and simple. They haven't had games that you can pick apart like we pick apart the Eagles. But that, again, becomes irrelevant because they're going to play. At some point, they're going to play. San Francisco's going to come here in December. I said this last night on WIP. I would bet good money that when they come to when San Francisco comes to Philadelphia, the most that these two teams will be separated is one game. That either the Eagles will be 11-1 and the 49ers will be 10-2, or the 49ers will be 11-1 and the Eagles will be 10-2, or they'll both be 12-0, whatever the amount of games they played before that is. And whoever wins that game is going to have a massive edge in who's getting home field in the playoffs. Because if there's only one game difference than the 49ers game behind the Eagles, they win that game. They're even with the Eagles to get the tiebreaker because they got that game, and vice versa. So whoever wins that game in December, I know it's way off, but it is going to be the game of the season. It will be at that point, and I bet good money when the season's over, it will still be the game. We keep changing. Last week it was Buffalo Miami. Oh, the game of the year. Until this week, when it was the 49ers and the Cowboys. Oh, the game of the year. And we'll continue to do this up until the 49ers and the Eagles. And then when that game is played, it'll be the game of the year that week, and it'll probably be the game of the year at the end of the week. But they're the two undefeated teams, and yeah, off a 42-10 win over the Cowboys, I think got to put the Niners one and the Eagles too. But again, doesn't matter. It'll be decided by these two teams on the field, and that's what happened in Sunday. Was decided against the Rams. And that defensive effort you pointed out was tremendous, and as they just shut down the Rams. Brandon Graham said it after the game. I've talked to some guy. You talk to guys much more than I do, but some guys that I've talked to, both on air and off air, have said halftime adjustments is one of the biggest overrated things in the National Football League. They go in, overrated. They eat some oranges. The coaches give them a little bit of a pep talk. They talk to each other, and they go back out on the field.
Yeah.
People think like the coach is there and he's writing stuff down on the board. Here's what we do different. We got to do that. There's very little of that actually goes on in the National Football League. But even if it's just one or two small things, it's considered an adjustment, and it should be. Whatever the hell they did, that was phenomenal because they were getting gutted pretty good in the first half. Both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were running wild and open in that secondary. And you mentioned the upgrade in the passing department that they just made it that much more difficult for Matthew Stafford. But they also, I think, shut it down in the secondary. I think they played better coverage. Were you as surprised as I was that Bradley Roby was not only activated, but played as much as he did? Damn, did they get him up to speed fast?
No, well, I was kind of alerted to that on Friday that he was going to play, but they were going to have him on a pitch count, which was, I think a little bit of desperation, to be honest, because they were aware that Kupp was going to play. And boy, he was healthy, and boy, he is good, Jody, man. It is. I can't say enough good things about Cooper Kupp. I mean, the separation he gets just from and from inside usually is unbelievable. It's something to see live. And they really, and understandably, they really struggled early. And they tried Goodrich first, then they tried Eli Ricks, and it was bad. And, then they kind of went to Roby. Now, that was the plan coming in. I asked Nick that they were going to rotate all the guys, but clearly Roby's going to be the guy. They just, when he's in football shape completely, and he already is, but, he's going to be the slot corner moving forward. Or it's going to be somebody from outside the organization if he fails. And he was better. And he was better than those guys because he knows how to play. He's been playing a long time, and he knows how to play. And he slowed things down a little bit, but I blame Sean McVay a little bit from getting away from it, which I don't understand. And that's a bright offensive mind. Arguably, a lot of people in this league would say the offensive mind. They choke around the league. You had a cup of coffee with him a couple of years ago. You get a head coaching interview. Some of these coaches are strange, and that's what I give the Eagles credit for. When you're not stopping something, they're not going to stop doing it.
Shouldn't.
No, to me, it's common sense. And the Eagles weren't stopping the slot stuff, and they just stopped doing it. And it was a little bit weird to me. And you get these, scripted group of plays at the beginning of games. And then when you get off that, you see it all around the league. Guys get very redundant. In McVay's case, I think he wasn't redundant enough. I mean, if they can't stop it, don't stop doing it. So I think he helped. And then I think the pass rush really helped. I mean, Jalen Carter, I don't know what to say anymore, Jody. I'm so disgusted at the rest of this league. If you go back to 2022, when Trayvon Walker was the number 1 overall pick, and it should have been Aiden Hutchinson in hindsight, but even Aiden Hutchinson, who's a great player, I'm not even talking. He's a level above those guys. He is so clear and beyond everybody else in that stinking draft. And I get it. I get the off the field stuff. But again, I've said this 100 times. He made mistakes due to immaturity. He wasn't robbing banks. He wasn't Al Capone. He wasn't this nefarious human being. He was just an immature kid, and people were scared off. And they handed maybe a generational player to the best roster in football. The whole league should be disgusted at themselves. He is unbelievable, and he is unblockable. And, you know, if you look at Hassan Reddick closing the game with the 2 sacks, the 1 sack, look at it. He's bowling over 2 people. Even when he's not making the play, he's impacting the play. This is Fletcher Cox is one of the best defensive players in this organization's history. No, I'm not. It's very early, but this guy's got a chance to be way above that. The Eagles lost. I'll say one last thing. The Eagles lost one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in football, who's doing a great job in San Francisco, by the way. And we don't even talk about it because it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because they got better. They got better. And it was handed to them on a platter. It's unbelievable.
It's a term that's used more often in basketball than it is in football. It's used in both, but I think of it more as a basketball descriptive term than it is in football. But first step quickness. He is so quick. And we talk about it, and if you get your hands on the film and you got the ability, you can zero in on it. Lane Johnson beats the snap. It's not like Lane Johnson is this unbelievably quick, fast, athletic for his size guy. He is just so well-trained and so smart. He gets that millisecond of a head start ahead of time. And between you and I, a lot of times it could be called a penalty. And they just don't. He is perfected leaving at the exact time he's supposed to leave. Jalen Carter doesn't even need that. He waits till the ball is snapped, and then he just outquicks the guy who's standing there in front of him, who he's just as physically as big as, weighs close to as many pounds, and he just goes by him like he's standing still. His first step quickness, yeah, and certainly at his amount of play in the league. At 5 games, I've never seen anybody. I don't care. Name any defensive tackle who's ever played in the National Football League. Their first 5 games against this kid's first 5 games, Jalen Carter wins. Now, when we start comparing to Aaron Donald and all-time greats and guys who are either in the Hall of Fame or heading to the Hall of Fame, that might be putting a horse before the cart a little bit. But if you're just talking a comp of what one player was at this stage of his career as to the exact same stage of the career of Jalen Carter, Carter's just better. He has had as dominant a first 5 games in the National Football League at the defensive tackle position as anybody I've ever seen him in my entire 50-plus years of watching football.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at PFF, just put this up this morning, a PFF grade, number 1 amongst rookie defenders, sacks, number 1, pressures, number 1, win rate, pressure rate, number 1. I mean, and you bring up his quickness. I think it was Lane. I think it was Lane who compared him to Geno Atkins, who's an all-pro, 4-time all-pro in Cincinnati, for people who don't remember him. Great player. But Geno was really undersized, you know. more in the mold of a John Randall, who I got to cover. Very undersized. So you could understand, yeah, he was amazingly quick. This guy's quick and he's huge and he's stronger than everybody. That usually you got to get in the NFL, you got to get in an NFL weight room. They always say, you know, old man strength, you know, some of these guys. Another former Bengal, if you remember Justin Smith, then he went to San Francisco. You might probably the strongest player. You know, he was just ragdoll people. Jalen Carter's stronger than everybody, and he's that quick. It is a combination we haven't seen before, because even Aaron Donald, he's undersized, tremendously undersized. Jalen Carter's not undersized. He's 6'4", 320, and he moves like that. And
so
look,
so
I picked on the Bears, and it's not just the Bears, but I picked on the Bears the most because they had 2 shots at him, and they're a terrible team with a terrible defensive front. So it's magnified. They handed the best defensive front in football, maybe the best defensive tackle in football. I'll never get it. I can be around for 50 more years, Jody, which I probably won't be, but I'll never get it. I'll never get it.
And to Howie's credit, he went up and got him. Don't forget, the Eagles moved up one pick to get him. Something between you and me, Howie, you probably didn't have to. The Bears weren't going to take him anyway. Yeah. If they thought he was that good and they could get past his off-field stuff, they would have taken him earlier than that. So he was so much. It just tells you how, because a lot of times after the fact, the Eagles must have loved him. They did. You don't really know. We're not in the war room. We're not in the scouting meetings at a time what their actual grade was and how motivated they were. That proves it. When you move up from number 10 to number 9, just in case, because you've got the fear of maybe somebody else jumping in and trading with the Bears and giving them more, but the Bears dropping back a little more. I wasn't taking any chances. He loved the kid. He wanted the kid. He had to have the kid. He went and got the kid and paid a price that he may not have needed to pay. Oh, it's well worth it now that we get a chance to see Jalen.
Oh, and they loved him. I can tell you that 100%. And, you know, I joked about it. This is the biggest Eagles pick of all time. When people were all Bijan, I was like, well, if Carter's there, they're taking Carter. I mean, and I didn't think he would get there. I thought Seattle might take him. Bunch of teams would come to their senses and say, it's not that big of a deal. We'll take it. And look, what's the old expression? Scared money that don't make money. And the reference of that, it could have blown up. Yes, of course. You know, anytime you have red flags, but you know, it's a cost benefit. And these teams, man, I mean, and a lot of that, I talk about that all the time, Jody. That's one advantage Howie has over most other general managers. He's got a lot of room to make mistakes. Other guys don't have room to make mistakes. But because they don't have room to make mistakes, they often make mistakes because they're afraid to do things.
Chances.
Yeah, they're afraid to take any chances,
right? And
they end up worse for it.
All right, so let me ask you one more Jalen Carter question, and then we'll move on to something else. He played 71% of the snaps, easily his most so far this year, and we knew it was going to tick up because of no Fletcher Cox in the game. So they needed to cover extra snaps, which, oh, by the way, weren't a whole hell of a lot of them in second half because the Eagles were so dominating.
Yeah,
it came back that they had less snaps than they usually do on defense. But if you go by percentage, 71% for Carter. Fletcher's going to be back probably this week, at the latest the week after that. Carter has proved that he can play those numbers. It wasn't like he was running on empty in the fourth quarter because they taxed him, they pushed him, they gave him a little bit more on his plate. He ate it and he gobbled it all up. Is he still going to be a 70% snap guy going forward? Because how do you take a guy who's dominating, snap in and snap out off the field the way he is?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on, you know, in close games, he's going to be on the field late. So, the Eagles tend to have things well in hand.
Depends on
At
the
some
score, but
point,
that makes sense.
I expect, um, them to be in a tough game at some point, and then he's going to be on the field, and then it'll spike those weeks. Um, it's always going to be a rotational position. Yeah, if they're up uh, 2 touchdowns, they're not going to play him as much. So, and like you said, the 70% ranking, probably not going to hit that number too many times for that reason. Plus, also if you're out there for more plays, you're only out there for 56 defensive plays, I think, then, the total number of 39 becomes more important. That's not outrageous. If you're out there for 80 snaps and then you're at 70%, then you're probably pushing it. So a couple reasons, but the percentage is probably not going to be that high too much, but the snap numbers might be up if they're in a close game and they're on the field more. And it should be, and it should keep going up incrementally. But they're lucky enough to have tremendous depth. I mean, Milton Williams stepped in and played well. And he was the other big part of it because he was going to get a few more snaps, and he ended up with 33. But he played well. Kentavious Street was up only 16, but that's more. And he's an NFL player, and he proved that. We even got to see Moro Ajomo for a handful of snaps, making his NFL debut. They're incredibly deep. And remember, they didn't have Marlin as well, not only Fletcher. So that's the deepest position on the team.
Yep.
And they utilized it, and they should. They should.
And we certainly break them down to defensive tackle. Even we break down defensive tackles because Jordan Davis plays a specific position on the defensive front. It's not exactly the same as the other defensive tackles, so you can get really in the weeds as to who plays what position and how many snaps and everything else. One more defensive line snap question. Why is Derek Barnett still playing snaps for this team? I'm sorry.
Like it.
I know.
By the way,
piling on, but he continues to play week in and week out. And no, I'm not breaking down the all 22 film afterwards and sticking a grade on him like Pro Football Focus is. He does nothing. He just accomplishes nothing when he's on the field. Is it just so to not get Son Reddick hurt because you don't want him on the field as many snaps as you would have to if you just said, yeah, Derek, you can take the day off?
No, I mean, it's very similar to defensive tackle. They want to come at you in waves, and they think he's at some point I expect Nolan Smith to lap him.
5 games in hasn't happened, John.
No, but you have the luxury of taking it slow. And I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I don't look, the Eagles, I say it all, the Eagles think more of Derek Barnett than you and a lot of the fan base does. Same thing with Quez Watkins. I'm glad that Nick Sirianni, that was literally word for word. Thank you, Nick, of what I've been saying on the show of why Quez Watkins plays. Because, and I'm not, I got it from Nick. So everyone got to see it out of his mouth. So I'm glad he did that. If he ever gets into a Derek Barnett discussion, he'll say similar things. They value him more than the average fan does. But I mean, Nolan Smith, I would like to see pass him. Because he's not going to be here next year. I know we said that in the past, but this is it. This is it. And, it's the 4th defensive end. That's why this team's really good when we're nitpicking the 4th defensive end. They might be able to get a little bit better if they get Nolan Smith up to speed.
So you're saying you believe this is Derek Barnett's last year as a Philadelphia Eagle, correct?
I do. I do believe.
I'll make a wager with you on another one. This is Quez Watkins last year.
I believe that as well.
Eagles as well.
I believe that as well.
So if both of these guys are halfway out the door, I'm sorry. It just doesn't add up to me. You and Nick can stand together and sing Kumbaya and hold hands.
Well, I'm not
Wes
standing
Watkins
together.
is a waste of time.
I'm referencing,
and you said, you're right. You said right here with me last week, and Nick said it again. I think you're both off your rocker. The threat that is Wes Watkins. What threat? What threat is he? Because he ran a certain time at the combine 3.5 years ago, at some point, doesn't the National Football League, I'm going to give credit to the other 31 teams here in the league and go, they're going to look at Quez on film, at what he's done this year, last year, and every year you move backwards, it becomes less and less important in the evaluation and go, we're running scared of this guy? This is the guy we're going to shift our defense to? AJ's going to get more open because Quez is on the field in the slot? Are you kidding me? You could say that with a straight face, Nick Sirianni? Come on.
I mean,
you know what reminds me of?
In the case of
running back.
In the case of Quez, he ran whatever 4.32 3 years ago. He still runs that fast, Jody. It's not like he's lost speed. Again, in a league full of fast guys, he's a fast guy. He's fast to them. So I mean, he said it succinctly, and if people don't want to listen to him, that's fine.
But we can listen. We just blatantly disagree.
No,
but I don't have to take his word as gospel because he's the head coach of the Philadelphia.
No, I didn't say you did. Look, there's what he said, and he says it consistently. So, and I'm trying to pull up the quote. There's a lot of things that happen that maybe it's a slant that AJ catches where Quez clears the middle to make it a cleaner throw. So that's the point. That's the point I've been trying to say. That when you have these routes, everybody has a design, and you can't just say, "Oh, Quez Watkins stinks, so I'm not gonna pay attention to him." And because he's able to stretch the field, it makes it a cleaner throw for the quarterback than if 4-6 guys in there or Olamide Zaccheaus is out there. He doesn't have that ability to create the same spacing. So it's something that doesn't show up. Similar thing in a different way with Zach Pascal that people seem to identify with more now because they see the struggles. Look, it's boring. What's Zach Pascal? We said, what does Zach Pascal give me? Well, he doesn't give you much as a receiver, but as a guy who does the dirty work, yeah, you'd like to have him back. They would like to have him back. They don't have that trait anymore. I don't. People tend to not call speed dirty work, but when you don't have it, it condenses the field and it makes it more difficult for the quarterback. I mean,
I know the coach was there because he was on the sidelines. He was coaching the team, but maybe he didn't see the stat sheet afterwards. Somehow, AJ Brown was able to catch 175 yards worth of passes last week against the Commanders without Quez on the field. How did he do that? Without the threat of Quez being able to get deep and stretch the defense, somehow AJ on those slants was able to come up with 175 yards worth of catches and 3 touchdowns. I don't know how he did it because
I can tell you how he did it.
Without the speed and the threat that is Quez Watkins, I'd be shaking in my boots if I were.
You're too much. You're too much. Here. I'm going to put this up. You're too much of a box score guy, Jody. I can tell you why. Emmanuel Forbes was an abject disaster in Washington, and he couldn't hold up on fade routes one-on-one. So it didn't matter. You could take the other 10 people off the field. It could have been one-on-one Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Emmanuel Forbes. That's a Washington Commanders problem. Everything is not the same from game to game. Look, this is a team. I'm not saying they're always right. This is a team that came into the season saying Kenny Gainwell's our best running back. And then Kenny Gainwell got hurt after a pedestrian performance in Foxborough, and they had to play DeAndre Swift, and it was proven that DeAndre Swift was better. I'm not saying they're always right, but they came back and they said, all right, Alameda got to play. Alameda made some plays, and whatever the rep count was, their decision was 53-8, or I have to look it up. Quez was at 52. Alameda was at 9.
Alameda was 11%.
Yeah.
Quez was
Well,
on the field
I was looking at
6
PFF
times more than Alameda was.
Yeah,
which I think is ridiculous.
and they did it for that reason. He explained it in clear and defining terms. They're doing it not for the box score. They're doing it to make things easier for the quarterback to get the football to the real playmakers.
And
Not that they can accomplish it with Alameda, but it makes it easier. At least they think that. Now, if he keeps,
and I think they're wrong. Plain and simple. I just disagree. I understand when Nick explains it. I understand when you explain it. I contemplate it myself. I don't agree. I just think they're wrong. I don't think the threat that is Quez Watkins helps near as much as either you and or more importantly Nick Sirianni think. It just there's not
year, and
other than the way they think about it. I'd like a little evidence to be able to and they break down game film, which I don't do.
There is no evidence to an intangible.
Right.
Unless you're watching the tape and you're watching him manipulate the spacing. There is no, that's the point. And he even said the word stat sheet. It doesn't show up in the stat sheet with Quez. He even said that. That's not me. That's Nick's direct quote. Right. What can't ever show up on a stat sheet with Quez is his ability to stretch the field. His speed is real. That's a direct quote. And when he does leave, and I do think this will be his last season, I do think it's because it's his 4th year, his final year in his rookie deal, and he'll probably get a better deal elsewhere. They will find another 4-3 guy to do the same thing. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's not. They don't want with AJ and Devontae, as long as they're here, and Dallas, they don't want a 4-6 guy. They want somebody to manipulate the spacing to make things easier for those guys. And it's an intangible. It's never going to show up on a stat sheet.
All right. And if Nick Sirianni were here with us, I would ask him, but he's not. So I'm going to ask you instead. Who's the other 4-3 slot receiver in the league that this is working wonders for? That their threat of speed is their third guy who they play in the slot.
They don't play, but number one, they don't play him in the slot. AJ moves in the slot. Devontae moves. People get, he's the third receiver. He plays in the slot, but they manipulate and they move people around. And guys, they do slot fades with Devontae and AJ, and they do different things to get those guys open. That's the whole point. They're trying to get those guys open. Intangibles are intangibles. And part of the thing about Jalen Hurts, people say as a great thing because he's a superstar player, but you still hear the people, well, he's only got 22 touchdowns last year, whatever it was. Oh, how could he be in the MVP race with 20? He's got an intangible nature that people cannot, not all people, some people cannot grasp, which turns into 22 wins out of 23. I'm not trying to compare the two as players. I'm just trying to compare the intangibles for people that need something black and white, a number. There are certain guys that are never going to be impressive to them, and those are role players. And you need role players. Not in the case of Jalen.
Right, Jalen's much more than a role player.
In the case of, I shouldn't have brought up Jalen. I should have just kept with Zach Pascal. I was just because some people criticize Jalen for his lack of stats. But Zach Pascal would be the better comparison in a different, because his intangibles are different. But intangibles are intangibles. And when it comes to role players, yeah, I mean, they had a chance. I mean, Alameda played okay when Quez was hurt, and they went right back to Quez. And, if he keeps doing dumb stuff in his chances to catch the football. Like, he had an easy first down. He tried to kick it outside on that stupid bubble screen. Maybe Alameda will get in the equation, but I doubt it, man, because they want that speed on the field.
Let me ask you this question, John. I know we got to take our first break. We're going long here. Kenny Gainwell was the number one back coming out of camp, right? They decided, had the competition. We trust him. He's been here longer. We're still learning about DeAndre Swift. But Kenny Gainwell got the most carries week 1. DeAndre Swift got 1. Then Kenny misses game number 2, and DeAndre Swift goes in and does what he does. They didn't go back to, we've made our decision. Kenny Gainwell is our guy. We're going back to him immediately. No, they saw the evidence of what transpired, and they said, all right, maybe we need to adjust. And that's my point here on Quez Watkins this week. Alameda produced more. I'm not talking about threats here. I'm not talking about perceived what he does by doing certain things, running certain routes, that he gets other people open, blatantly overstated by the coach. I'm just talking about what happened. And Alameda produced more than Quez did. As soon as Quez was ready, he gets back to getting 66% of the stat, and Alameda gets 11. They proved that they're willing to put their overall evaluation through a camp aside if there's evidence to the contrary on the field. Why'd they do it a running back and not a wide receiver?
Well, the positions are different. Running backs, more of a lead role. In the case of wide receiver 3, you're the third wide receiver. So again, they're trying, his role is more clearly defined of, I'm trying to make AJ and Devontae and Dallas, I'll throw him in there as well, trying to make things easier for those guys. Whereas the lead back's got to make some plays. That's number one. But I brought up DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell for a reason. It's not like the coaching staff is saying, we picked Quez. They already proved they could shift if they want to shift. They don't want to shift. And they don't want to shift for a reason. And they gave you the reason. And that's the reason, because they think, and you said perceived. To them, it's not perceived. To them, it's real. Now, maybe they're wrong, but that's what they believe. And this coaching staff, to be quite honest, deserves the benefit of the doubt, I think, at this point. And that's what they believe. And again, they've been successful with Alameda. They've been successful with Quez. They've been successful with insert name. And it has more to do with Jalen and AJ and Devontae and Dallas and that offensive line. So when you start getting in the weeds with role players, it's less important. I wouldn't call the lead back, even though it's a devalued position, I wouldn't call that a role player. So it's more important to get that right. And if you see a different trait, because they're getting the football, with the third wide receiver, they're not getting the football, or in a very limited fashion, very limited traffic. So if that's what they want on the field, that's what they want on the field. And like I said, that if Zach Pascal was back, you'd probably have a little bit more success on these bubble screens, but you don't have them. So role players they're never going to be stat guys. And either is Alameda if he plays. He had 2 catches, big catches. What game was that? Everything runs together for me. But I think Alameda's better as a receiver. And if somebody got hurt, I'd rather have Alameda in there than Quez. But for their specific role of what they want, yeah, I get why they want Quez on the field.
Yeah, I don't. And if you're going to coach up, and Nick says this all the time, we have to win every snap. We must win every snap. That's what this is all about. Narrow focus, win the snap, win the day. Don't look ahead. We can say the same thing about position. Even if your wide receiver 3 is your 11th most important player on the field, on any given offensive snap. You get your 5 offensive linemen, your quarterback, your 2 wide receiver, your tight end. All of a sudden, who's left standing? Wide receiver 3. So, yeah, he's the 11th most important guy on an offensive snap. That's your job, is to get the most out of your 11th most important guy on every single snap. I know it's really micromanaging.
Now I'm getting, do I work for the team on the, boy, that pisses me off. I wish this team stunk so I could rip them to high hell. I can't rip them to high hell because they're really good. I find fans very interesting because they either think I hate this team or I love this team. What I'm telling you is what Nick Sirianni believes. And for this week, he actually said it himself. He said the same stinking thing. It's not from me. I've been saying that. It's him. That's what he wants.
But John, you're saying you believe it too. You agree with him. Do you agree with Nick Sirianni that he is putting forth this perception? And yeah, it's the word I use, and I'll stand by it. A perception of Quez Watkins, because whether he is or isn't a stat getter, whether I pick up a stat sheet or not, I'd like to have some proof that I can wrap my head around, other than this is what we think happens when Quez does something on a play when he actually does nothing.
So if the head coach of the football team, who's an offensive guy, says this is what he provides, why is he lying about that? Why would he lie?
Hold on. Do you really believe that Nick Sirianni never gets anything wrong?
No, he gets a lot of stuff wrong.
Then that's all we're doing. I don't think I'm not accusing him of lying. I'm accusing him of being wrong. And Nick Sirianni gets stuff wrong. He gets much more right than he does wrong. But when you get some wrong, and I think you get some wrong, I'm going to point out that I think you got it wrong, Coach.
No, that's fine. But before you were saying, that's my point. Why would he do something he doesn't want to do? He can do whatever the hell he wants for the most part when it comes on the field. So he could bench Quez tomorrow. Maybe he does in 2 weeks if he keeps doing these stupid things. He already benched Kenny Gainwell for DeAndre Swift. That's why I brought it up. He's willing to make these moves when he sees that he's made a mistake or he's made a misevaluation or he's made this, and maybe it happens. But for this particular team at wide receiver 3, that's where the comp of Swift and Gainwell loses and goes off track. For wide receiver 3, again, if AJ gets hurt, which you don't want to happen, if Devontae gets hurt, which you don't want to happen, it becomes a different conversation, because then you need actual production. Then you need actual production from a receiver. And if it were me, I would go with Olamide. I think he's a better receiver. In that instance, if you need somebody to catch the football with traffic, and believe me, I get it. People say receiver, and they used to say it with Riley Cooper back in the day. When you talk about blocking, same thing with Zach Pascal. When you're talking about blocking for a receiver, that's not a good thing. First, yes, if it's a guy you're counting on, if it's your 4th receiver and his role is to block, it's not a bad thing. If it's your 3rd receiver and his role is to make things easier for the top 3, and I'm talking about Dallas as well, again, it's not a bad thing. If he's got to produce, it's a bad thing.
Understood. And yes, you can actually break down game film and you can see where blocking can. On the given play that you design, where you need blocking from a wide receiver, gets the job done. That, to me, you can come up with evidence that, wow, this guy's doing a job. It's not the most important job on the field, but we have a job for him and he's doing it real well. I don't see that with Quez. All I see is he runs fast. And they think that he brings coverage with him when he goes. And I just don't believe
that's
that.
Easy to see for the coaches. I mean, that is easy to see. I mean, if a guy's not paying attention, and by the way, they can't do that, Jody. They can't just let him run through the field. They can't. They get fired. You could say, well, you're going to throw a 60-yard bomb to Quez and he's going to drop it. Well, he's got the 90-yard play. He's got the long touchdown against Minnesota. He's got a couple long touchdowns. Yeah. I mean, as a head coach or a defensive coordinator of the opposition, whether it's Alama, well, whatever the name is, you can't let any NFL receiver run behind you.
Understood. But my point is that if Olamide runs that same route and he runs it 1/10 of a second slower than Quez, is that really giving the safety the chance to cheat in and get up and take the slant away from A.J. Brown? I don't think so. And if and when the safety does get sloppy and lets him get behind him, yeah, I'm going to take Olamide catching the ball over Quez every day of the week.
Well, Tyreek Hill is the fastest, is the most productive fast receiver in the history of football, in my estimation, because usually really fast guys, are not the best when it comes to route running, hands. He's managed to put it all together, and he's a special player. But yeah, there is a huge difference between a 4.32 guy and a 4.6 guy in the NFL. A huge when it comes to speed.
Olamide's not 4.6.
Olamide's, he ran 4.59. He's 4.6. I mean, that's what he is.
Quez
ran a lot of guys. 4.32, Quez.
Okay, so we're talking about 2/10.
I mean, if you don't think that's huge, if you don't think that's huge in the NFL, I can't help you. That is in real time. That is enormous in the NFL. Enormous, an enormous difference. Enormous.
Right, but again, we're now 4 years removed from the time that Quez ran that time at the combine.
So now we're saying he's slow.
No, I'm not saying he's slow, John. I'm just not going to revert to a time they ran 4 years ago in shorts in Indianapolis. To me,
he might be faster because he
might, and he might not catch the ball as well as he used to either. At least that's what I'm seeing.
Well, I don't think he's ever caught the ball well.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jordan McDonald. We are Birds 365. Ricky Ricardo, voice of the Eagles in Espanol, is going to join us. Come up in a couple. Stick around.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru. Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac and Mac. John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. Ricky Ricardo in a little bit give us an Eagle en Espanol perspective, the voice of the Eagles in Spanish. Ricky Ricardo is going to jump in with us. All right, John, I want to ask about another Eagle receiver, not wide receiver, but a receiver who had a bust-out game this week, and that's Dallas Goedert. They had made it part of the game plan previously to make sure Dallas Goedert got the ball. On a couple of games, he wasn't as big a factor. Game one, he had one ball thrown his way. Last week against Washington, they only targeted him twice, but they did target him a lot in the Minnesota game. Got 7 balls thrown his way, most of them in the first half, and 7 balls against Tampa as well. 9 this week, 8 receptions, 117 yards. Certainly a bust-out game. Far eclipsed what he did in the first 4 games combined in this one game. Did they change anything? Did something work more than it has to this point? Just trying to understand if either Goddard said something or the offense coordinator said no or Sirianni said something. Here's why the aspect of Dallas Goedert in our pass game grew by leaps and bounds this week. Did anybody have any explanation as to why it worked out the way it did on Sunday?
They will claim it just went that way, but yeah, they heard all the talk, and I got the business from Nick Sirianni because they kept hearing it all week about why isn't Dallas Goedert getting the football, and there's an example of the coaching staff, they can get him the football if they want the football. And they made a concerted effort to give him the football. Now, they will tell you on the big play, the 49-yard play, Nick specifically said that was designed to go to Devontae Smith, and he was the second option. So, yeah, there are times where the progression goes to where it goes. But the first 4 games were such a disparity of what he typically produces. There was obviously an issue, and they wanted to correct that issue, and they were able to do it against the Rams. And it was, this was Devontae Smith's week to do nothing basically. And they might hear about that this week. And they, everybody calls it a good problem to have, but a good problem still has the word problem in there.
Yes.
And it's a problem to keep all these guys happy and all these guys getting fed. And that's why I say, I go, I don't want to revisit Quez anymore because I'm sick of it. But, the assumption is you just get the best group of people. And this guy, get the best receiver, get the best 5 receivers. A receiver drives me insane because, if you're 4th or 5th, you got to, 5th especially, you got to play on special teams. And everybody wants, we can revisit DeAndre Hopkins. Remember that? Oh, let's go get DeAndre Hopkins. No. Yeah, everybody can't get, even with the people you have, they can't get them the football. Because here, Dallas gets 9 targets, 8 receptions, as you mentioned, for 117 yards. And all of a sudden, Devontae's got 1 reception. So it juggles around from week to week, but it's really difficult to get all these playmakers involved. So accumulating stars for Madden purposes or whatever you want to call it, fantasy football purposes, it doesn't work on a team. And that's why I constantly build up, and Howie's very good at this, roster building and roles. And you got to figure out who can do this and who can do that. And part of it is certain guys aren't going to get the football. And are they going to be happy with that? Or are they going to sulk? And for the most part, the 3 stars, AJ, Devontae, and Dallas, don't sulk. But you've already seen it with AJ. He ain't happy when he doesn't get the football.
Yeah.
Guess what? Dallas ain't happy when he doesn't get the football. And Devontae, although he's well schooled from his Alabama days, he ain't happy when he doesn't get the football. And there's a reason for that. They're really, really good players, but good problem, still problem in that phrase.
Agree with you on that. And since you brought it up, I just feel the need to respond. Quez did nothing on special teams this week. Quez doesn't play.
No, he's the third receiver. I'm talking about the fifth receiver. People want to accumulate. I'm not accusing you, but you saw it with DeAndre Hopkins. They just want the next best player, and it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
You know, I understand that. I comprehend that. I understood the value of Zach Pascal. I'm just not seeing the nuance to Quez Watkins, but we'll move on from that. All right. You were there. I wasn't, judging by television, and took a call or two last night from an individual who was out at the game. Is football that inconsequential in LA?
Yes.
That the Eagles can fly cross country and absolutely have 50%, and that's my guesstimate. Volume, it sounded more than 50. It really did. Legitimately, on my television on Sunday, it sounded like an Eagles home game. My guess is shots in the crowd about 50%. How much did they take over that stadium?
Oh, completely. Yeah, it's about 50-50. And if the Rams, if it were similar with, the only reason it was 50-50 is because of how far it was. If it were closer, it would have been complete takeover.
I'm baking that in ahead of time.
Yeah,
You're going cross country and taking over somebody's stadium.
But now here's the thing: everybody takes over in Los Angeles, so it's easy to take over there. San Francisco is the most. Now it's much closer for those people, so that's like 70-80. I mean, complete takeover. Pittsburgh's going to be there in a couple weeks. Pittsburgh's another well-traveled cross country. They will take over. Everybody takes over in that stadium. Everybody takes over in that stadium. They do not care about football. It's a shame. This team won a Super Bowl a few years ago. It's a beautiful stadium. I can't even explain to you how beautiful the stadium is.
Have you been to Vegas yet?
Yeah. I'm not impressed with Vegas.
LA significantly better than Vegas. Huh?
Oh, not even in the same ballpark.
Really?
Not even
I've been either one.
Ballpark.
That's why I ask.
Of the newer stadiums, this is tremendous. Atlanta's tremendous. Minnesota's tremendous. Dallas is still awesome. Yeah, I was, especially since there's all the money in Las Vegas, they want kind of no frills on that thing. It's still nice because it's new, but compared to those four specifically, I'm trying to think if I forgot one. Not even
Houston's
in the same.
Pretty new. Have you been? Did you go to Houston last year for the Thursday night game?
Yeah. Houston's nice. Houston's not as new as those, but yeah, that's better as well. But I would say those are the top four: Atlanta, Los Angeles, Minnesota, Dallas, I would say, are the top four stadiums. This one, and they spent, I think, $6 billion, and not only, their NFL media has a big building right next door, their campus, they do all their work out there, so it's more than just the stadium. From a league perspective, and obviously they wanted Southern California back in the mix for Super Bowls, and they've already had one.
Yep.
And they'll have a bunch more. Yeah, the stadium is outrageous. It's tremendous. But everybody takes it over, and yeah, they don't care about football. And the Raiders are still the most popular team probably in Los Angeles, and that is more encompassing than branding and everything. And the Rams have the most history. The Chargers are irrelevant. Everybody takes over. Everybody. So, I mean, the Eagles take over, I would say them. If I were going to rate traveling I would say Eagles are right there with Pittsburgh, Dallas, Green Bay. And I don't even know if Dallas is traveling. They just have bands all over the
Right.
place.
You got to break it down even further. Is somebody getting on a plane from Dallas to
Yeah.
go to another town?
Yeah.
Or do they just happen to be a fan of Dallas that already lives in that town and got their
Yeah.
hands on tickets? You don't really know.
I would say it's Philly, Pittsburgh, Green Bay, depending on the year. And you know, the Eagles are really good now.
You know who else travels pretty well? Cleveland.
Cleveland does. Minnesota does. Denver does, but they're kind of down. There's a lot of teams that travel well. And there's a lot of teams that don't. But I would say the most consistent are Eagles, Pittsburgh, Green Bay, and a lot of that has to do with success. I mean, when your team stinks, you're less willing to, you know, it costs a lot of money, obviously, to go from
it's
Philly
one
to
fan
Los
base
Angeles.
that had built up a reputation of traveling pretty well will come to a screeching halt. Patriots. When you're going to the Super Bowl every year, every other year, all of a sudden you're a bad football team.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to worry about Patriots taking over your stadium between now and the end of the year. All right, we got to get another break. You fell behind. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Appreciate you streaming in on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grossinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac Birds 365 guys. Less than 10 minutes away from ushering in Ricky Ricardo, voice of the Eagles in Espanol, is going to jump in with us. Johnny Mac, don't know if you got any additional info to this. Brought it up yesterday when you weren't here, and we saw what Jason Kelsey said to the TV cameras after the game on Sunday. And he didn't really expound on what got him as overheated as he did. He explained, listen, I only do this with people I love, which was nice to know. He loves Jeff Stoutland. He loves Nick Sirianni. It's a love fest. I get that. That's very good. But he didn't tell anybody what he was so exercised about on the sidelines. And yeah, he was jawing right in Sirianni's face. And the thing that got me was he laid hands on Stoutland. You never see a player touch a coach. And I know he was just trying to make a point. It wasn't like he was trying to do physical
it's a little too
harm to
powerful.
him, but he laid hands on his coach, which I was borderline shocked at. Did he ever expand on what the Eagles weren't doing in the red zone that got him so exercised that he brought it to the sidelines and got into it with his coaching staff?
No, he was asked, and he kept it in-house as they typically do. And Nick,
not everybody does. AJ Brown will tell you. There are certain guys that come out.
No, even AJ.
Jason Kelsey's too smart to do that, but other guys, the emotions get flowing. I give AJ credit though, because when he had the whole sideline thing, he said afterwards, "I got out. I wasn't sticking around. I wasn't there for you guys to talk to me afterwards because I need."
Well, it would have been worse because Jason always talks, so him getting out would have been. Because but yeah, I mean, he's an emotional guy. Jason, like, at practice, I remember the famous kicking of the trash can at practice the one time. He gets fired up at times. Yeah, they've struggled in the red zone, as everyone consistently brings up, and fairly. I mean, they're top 10 in basically everything on offense except red zone. And it haven't been good. And teams are clearly trying to take away the run in the red zone, which they were so effective, especially the quarterback run, forcing them to throw the football. And I don't think they're comfortable with that yet. And they got to figure that out. And I think it was just frustration as far as what exactly. Probably something to do with the running game and probably something to do with that. But I mean, if people want to stop the running game, they can stop the running game. And then you just got to go in a different direction. And I think that's the part the Eagles haven't figured out. And they need to figure out. And it's close spacing, but you got big bodies, man. Just throw it up. Throw a fade to AJ. Throw a fade to Dallas Goedert. What 6'5" tight end like Dallas Goedert doesn't get fade patterns thrown to him in the red zone. The Eagles just don't do that kind of stuff.
What slot corner, and you will get a matchup with every once in a while Dallas against the slot corner. Most slot corners are 5'10", maybe 5'11".
Yeah,
it's 6'5". Dallas got you kicking the ball up and over that slot corner on that play.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that in that closed area is just about letting the receivers make plays and go up over defensive backs who, as you point out, especially bigger guys. There aren't a lot of James Bradbury size corner. That's why we talked about Bradbury in the slot. It didn't make sense. But even on the outside, there aren't a lot of those guys, Tariq Woolen types, and other teams take advantage of that. The Eagles haven't. And I think they got to do more of that. And then once you prove you can do that, then you can get back to the running game because people will start paying attention to that. So ultimately, I think it was just frustration, and maybe Jason, Jason's very savvy. Maybe he'll say what really set him off on his podcast. He's probably saving it. It's probably content. Should I be that big of a conspiracy theorist?
No, sure. Why not? But he might not have time on the podcast because Travis is going to have to explain why Taylor didn't show up at the game this weekend. That will take up a bigger chunk of the podcast.
She didn't show up, huh? Yeah. Well, it's probably because it was Minneapolis. You don't want to go to Minneapolis.
Okay. And I was thinking True Love, and now I got a question out if she can't make the game. But that it may or may not come up on the podcast this week with Jason and his brother. And I got to say that you probably didn't see this because these were playing at the time. I thought Travis was done. He's out on a pass play. He takes a bad step, and he goes down like he's shot. One of those non-contact injury things, and he just drops the football. That's how much pain it was. That's how much it hurt in the moment that Travis Kelce, one of the best at holding on to the football, just dropped the football, and he's got to crawl to get it back. He can't even get up to get it back. He crawls and extends, and he pulls the ball back in. He doesn't give it up. And then he very slowly gets up. Doesn't get up right away either, but when he does get up, he slowly gets up.
I know he came back and scored a touchdown.
He was done for the season.
Yeah.
Well,
I did not see the play where he hurt himself, but yeah, as you mentioned him crawling, I'm sure there wasn't a Viking defender within 15 yards.
No, he was. Well, what else is new? Travis, why would you cover that Kelce guy if you're the opposition guy? It boggles my mind how wide open he gets. He's like Cooper Kupp. He's just so great at running patterns and just making. He makes other teams look really bad. But I'll be honest, John, I thought his season was over. It just, I have seen enough of these non-contract injuries. When you go down like that and you look that bad, you're rip, tear,
you brought up Las
surgery.
Vegas. I think it was Vegas. I thought Jason Kelce was done the one year. It was the play before halftime. I'll never forget it. He was in such pain, and he walked up, and I said, "Oh, he's done. He's done for the year." Kelce finally got, and he missed one play, and he was back out there for the second half.
They grow those Kelce boys tough as all hell. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. I see in our waiting room the voice of the Eagles en Espanol, Ricky Ricardo, joins us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up, and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac and Mac guys. Oh, Johnny Mac took a powder. Maybe he took a power hit. I don't know what the hell happened to my partner, John McMullen. But he'll be back with us in a second. In the meantime and in between time, I get to talk to the voice of the Eagles in Espanol. You hear him on WIP as well, Ricky Ricardo. And I'm glad to say, your goatee game is looking good there, Ricardo. Not too shabby. You got I go big and white. You go well trimmed and dark. We're a nice contrast between each other.
It's the off season. You know, the Yankees facial hair policy doesn't count in the off season, Jody. So
are you sure that the Yankees don't have people out there keeping an eye on you? Are you an Instagram guy? You putting pictures up? They're gonna know that are you allowed? Is it written in your contract? You are allowed to have a goatee during the off season.
I think I can go no further than this. But if I keep it nice and trimmed and keep it this way, I think everybody's all right with it.
Looks good, my friend. All right, Eagles are 5-0, and that's kind of what John and I do. We point out what the Eagles are doing really well. God, we sung the praises of Jalen Carter for 20 minutes in our first hour tonight on how just eye-catchingly dominant he's been for a rookie 5 games into a season, how good he is. But we also point out the shortcomings and what could be improved at the catchphrase in football now these days, clean up. We can still clean some things up, and the Eagles have some things they can clean up, but it always has to end with comma, but they're 5-0. Do they look like a 5-0 team to you? We know they are. Do they look it?
No, and that's in a weird sort of way, it's a good thing. And I've been saying this all along. Somehow this team, in my opinion, without playing a full game where in every phase they play up to their capability or potential, whatever word you want to use, and still they're undefeated. But no, I don't think they have looked as, in any way, shape, or form, as strong as they did last year. Not on offense. It's been sporadic. On defense, they've had their moments. They're good enough to be 5-0. Special teams especially still has a lot to be, quote unquote, like you guys say, cleaned up. But I said this on the air the other night. You want to be playing your best football, let's say in December, going into the, let's say the last 5-6 weeks of the season, going into the postseason. If that be the case, then this team is winning while it's still trying to find itself under these 2 new coordinators and, the tumultuous offseason of, and I mean tumultuous, a very busy offseason for the quarterback with a new contract, a lot more attention, endorsements, things of that nature. Everything that goes on with a team that's been as good as the Eagles, but to be 5-0 and, in my opinion, still have so much more room to grow, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. Bounce back. Good to see you, Ricky. Little computer problem there, but I'm back in the mix. The one concern I have above all others is that secondary. I'm not impressed. Other than the outside corners. Now they have James Bradbury back where he belongs. I think that's a good thing. He got beaten for a touchdown by Puka Nacua, but I thought it was great coverage. Sometimes the other team makes a good play. You got to give them credit. Slay still Slay. He got
and
beat
by the way,
Cooper
he got
Kupp.
beat a couple times
Yeah,
too.
he got beat by Cooper Kupp, but I mean, Cooper Kupp's really good.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes you have to say, hey, the other team's got good players as well. The slot was a mess. Justin Evans was back. That kind of settled things down, but I don't think he played that well. Reed Blankenship, I think, is doing a solid job. But at some point, Ricky, I think, and I don't know who, but somebody's going to try to max protect against the Eagles and just take advantage of that secondary. Can they hold up long term to get where they want to go? We all know the expectations for this team. There's nothing else. Super Bowl or bust.
I think if there's any slippage between now and the end of the month, what's the trade deadline, guys? Halloween?
31st, 3 weeks from today.
3 weeks from today, the trade deadline. This team continues to win, but shows that vulnerability. I think Howie Roseman will pull the trigger on a deal to sew up that secondary. That's the one place, and John, I agree with you 100%. The one part of this team that is showing that it could leak oil at times, and the Bradley Roby, look, once Maddox is gone for the year now, it's a revolving door in that slot corner position, and that's been the most vulnerable. I think that's the one place. And I think Roseman understands this. Obviously, this season, it's Super Bowl or bust. If you've got to make one more deal, and he's got draft capital, he's got everything he needs, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be available between now and 3 weeks to shore up that one position. Now, linebacker, up and down. If they don't sign Cunningham, and who's the other guy that retired that tried to bring in?
Miles Jack.
Miles Jack. They don't make those moves to at least take a look at some veteran guys. The linebacker position, although the way they play defense it's not, I don't know. They don't need a Lawrence Taylor and a Carl Banks, or you don't need top notch. You only may rest in peace Dick Butkus, but that's the one piece that I think really needs to be addressed, because you're right, whether it's max protect or whether we get, Brock Purdy with George Kittle over the middle and Ayuk. And once you get a team that can really, really burn you, that's the one position, and that's the one place on the field over the middle where I think the Eagles are very, very vulnerable.
And doubling down on the linebacker position, a week before last, Nicholas Morrow with a sack fest.
Yes,
where he became their best pass rusher. Didn't see that one coming, but he did. And John and I kicked around. He said he kicked around on the postgame show with Seth. Is it a given that when Nakobe Dean comes back, he goes right back in? Or has Morrow played that well that you really have to think about maybe slow playing Nakobe back into the lineup? Yeah, this week, Morrow and Cunningham didn't light the world on fire statistically and/or
correct
watching the game. So if Nakobe is clear, you think they go right back to him as the green dot guy, and he's playing close to 100% of the snaps the same way the linebackers did last year?
I thought Nakobe, the first action we saw of him this year was showing signs of maybe being that kid that we thought he'd be. I'd still do the slow play, Jody, to tell you the truth. I hate to put labels on guys, but we're another injury or two from Nakobe Dean maybe being labeled as quote unquote injury prone, which you hate to do, but your best availability is your availability. Obviously, the old saying, but I'm trying to say your best ability is your.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. He played all 32 of those snaps last year and never got hurt. No. What are you talking about, injury prone? This is the first time he's ever been hurt in his Eagle career.
Well, he came out of school. School hurt, But look, Morrow's been a godsend at times. But you're right. You really can't. You can't close the Eagle defense. I can close my eyes and say that rotation on the defensive line, it's going to do its job. You're right. You guys are absolutely right about Jalen Carter. He's been a godsend, and I think he's lifted the play of all the other Georgia guys anyway. So Fletcher being out this week, there was a hole there. You could tell this past week, Cox not being in the line. I noticed it anyway, but still, the one part of that defense that I think is going to eventually need to be addressed with a personnel move is that slot corner, and then hopefully at linebacker they can hold up as good, or maybe as if Nakobe can finally take and continue to grow and take those next steps forward, that the linebacker position can be something we don't need to worry about.
Ricky, I think Bradley Roby's going to be fine in the slots when he gets up to speed, simply because he knows how to play, and this defensive front is so good. I think there's still enough in the tank that he can handle the job in this town. Maybe in other towns he couldn't at this stage of his career, but because that defensive front is so good, that's the luxury the Eagles have. But that's why I bring up the max protect. Somebody's going to pay. All right, let's test this secondary. Let's test this secondary. And that also includes the linebackers. With, as you mentioned, Nick Morrow has played very well. Zach Cunningham didn't have a good game, at least from PFF numbers out in Los Angeles. And we mentioned Nakobe Dean. They have to make 3 roster moves, guys. 3. They got to get Roby on the 53 at some point. They only got 2 more elevations. They got to get Nakobe on the 53 when he's completely healthy. And they got to get the punter on the 53 now because they're out of elevations. That's a lot. You know, are we just going to say, oh, Mario Goodrich, unfortunately, I think he's one who's going to go. This team's pretty deep. Howie's got his work cut out for him when it comes to figuring out this roster.
Didn't they put why am I
Cam Jurgens on IR. Cam Jurgens on IR, yes.
So that clears the roster.
That clears one for 4 weeks, but you know.
Right. And I don't know the answer to this. If either you two guys do, please do so. I know, Ricky, you and I are baseball guys. You can retroactively put a guy on the disabled list.
Yeah, you can't do that. The
day you put him on, you got to back off 4 weeks.
Yeah, he's got to miss.
Yeah, I like
games.
baseball's rule better. You can wait a couple of days and go, all right, we can just put him back on the IR now, and he's only actually out for 7 days rather than 10. NFL should take a page out of baseball on that one.
No flexibility like that in football. But you're right, John. But look at Howie we trust. Now, man is still on that back and forth. And by the way, has he impressed you guys?
No. But do you really want to go through that the entire year? I've heard people say that. Just keep bringing in punters, and you get 3 elevations, and keep going that way. But boy, I don't like that. I think they make Michael Clay's job difficult enough. I mean, just give him a punter. He might not be the best punter in the world, but I think he's done enough to where they say, all right, he can occasionally do his job. So maybe that's the best we can hope for at this point. And they don't punt that much anyway. Let's be honest.
Yes, the kid that got his name cleared, I forget his name, the super punter.
Yeah, he's
the punt god.
Yeah,
he's been picked up by no one, and I don't understand, Ricky, but
nobody wants to go down that route.
The Eagles, and guess what? The Eagles are saying thank you very much that nobody went down that route with Jalen Carter before they came up at 9.
And by the way, guys, people make that comparison with what's the difference between Matt Arise and Deshaun Watson? Really? One's a quarterback, one's a punter. Yeah, the quarterbacks they'll sell their soul for. And by the way, Cleveland's probably regretting that decision right now. Yeah. But quarterback, punter, no. Nobody's going to put up with anything. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. So that's part of it.
How is it? Let me ask you guys. How is it? And Jody, this is something really near and dear to both you and me, because I think we're both from the cradle Jet fans.
Yep.
How can it be that the New York Jets have never beaten the Philadelphia Eagles? Never.
0 for 13.
Well, they beat them in the preseason.
Oh.
Right. And they tied them in the preseason too.
Yeah. That's one of those things. And I thought this was going to be the year before the season when Jody and I did the win, that's a loss game, Ricky. Yeah. I had the Jets as the first loss, but of course that was the Aaron Rodgers Jets.
All right, but you did say you thought they could lose one of their first 5, John.
I did.
You didn't officially and formally attach a loss to any of the 5 games, but you did say
I did.
I think they could lose one of those first 5.
And I've been wrong. Which is why I said today, I'm kind of sick of this team, Ricky, because they win every week and it's boring for me. And I'm sitting there at halftime in Los Angeles, and I'm saying, the Rams are looking pretty good here. The Eagles don't know what to do with Cooper Kupp, and they just shut it down. The Eagles just shut it down. This team is really, really impressive. They just they're just relentless and they just out-talent teams. And ultimately, at the end, people might hang in for a quarter. It might be 2 quarters, might even be 3 quarters. But then they start to wear down, and it's usually the offensive line or the defensive line. Why can't anybody else in this league figure that out? It's supposed to be a copycat league. Why do so many other teams build, Atlanta would be my best example of this. Oh, let's draft a running back. Let's draft a tight end. Let's draft a receiver. You can't play offense if you can't block people. You can't play defense unless you can rush the quarterback.
Look, the Howie blueprint is something that when I watch the Miami Dolphins, I say to myself, my God, they've got more weapons than anybody else in the. I guess the running back is going to be out now. Deshane, he's hurt.
He's got a knee injury. Determined. They haven't come out with a statement yet, but they're fearful that his knee is going to be an issue.
So he may miss. He'll probably miss the Eagle game if anything to that. But you're right. The Eagles win, and they win in the trenches. They're a resilient bunch. They've got talent all over. Like I said, the one position that they could sew up, I guess, is in the secondary. But there's a mindset, there's a mentality with this team that they're not beaten. That you can't beat us. That what I really, really like, and I don't know if this is a Sirianni thing, but they have grown into a team. Maybe it's the leadership. It's the Jason Kelce's and the Fletcher Cox or the Brandon Grahams. They've got a mentality here that no matter what, we're going to eventually beat you. You can keep up with us, as the Rams did in the first half of this game this past Sunday. You can play with us for a little while, but we're eventually going to squash you like a grape. And they do that on both lines of scrimmage. So why other teams don't look at this blueprint and build from the inside out instead of the outside in, I've asked myself that question on several occasions, especially when I watch teams like the Dolphins that have so much talent, but that, the line play leaves a lot to be desired.
And don't kid yourself. The reason why they're having a success offensively and they're on a pace to have more yards than any team in the history of the National Football League is Tua, because he gets the ball out as quickly as he does, not because of a massive improvement to the Dolphins' offensive line. No, it's all about the quarterback.
It's all about.
By the way, Mike McDaniel, I think he had a great quote about that record. He was like, "Yeah, that's our goal, to have the most yards in the first 5 games." He's like, "I don't give a shit," but I like that from Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, but he'll take 4-1 and in first place in that division, with Buffalo having lost last week to fall to 3-2. All right, Ricky. I will borrow from our friend Jim Nance a tradition unlike any other. The Jets and Eagles' 4th and final preseason game of the year, which went by the boards and bummed me out. I love the fact that they always played the last game every year. And when the Jets could lose, I go, yeah, but nobody played. Come on, it doesn't matter. When they played during the regular season, the Jets never win. They're 0-13. And it's going to happen again this week, and for a reason that I didn't see coming. And tell me if you feel the same about this. Like John said, when the schedule comes out, you put your W's and L's on there. I really thought, well, I'm on record as having said I got wagering tickets I could show you that have the Jets against the Eagles in the Super Bowl this year. That was my big off-season play to try and pick the 2 teams in the Super Bowl. That went by the boards 4 plays into the Jet season when Aaron Rodgers went down. So I had concerns for this game way back when, from an Eagle perspective, that this could be a game, first game. I thought they were going 5-0, and this could very well be their first loss. I think the Jets are in a bad position this week to even be competitive, not because they don't have Aaron Rodgers, and that's a massive drop-off to Zach Wilson, but I think this is a letdown game for the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
After they'll go out and win one for the Hackman,
right.
Mr. Hackett this week. When was the last time you remember a team rallying around an assistant coach and giving him a game ball afterwards and going berserko on the field and in the locker room afterwards? This is a letdown game for an assistant coach.
A letdown game.
It is. Game
And
6. You would think that it's because the Eagles are 5. No, it's not going to be an Eagle letdown game. It's going to be a Jet letdown game.
And for an assistant coach, by the way, who's been there all of a half an hour.
Right, exactly.
He's only there because they wanted to lure Aaron Rodgers, and they brought in his favorite offensive coordinator. Look, they needed whatever to motivate them this past Sunday. They got it done. But I agree with you 100. I've been telling people since Sunday. I said the Jets probably left it all on the field in Denver. Who knows for how long? It'll take them. I think they've got a bye. Yeah, the Jets bye is in week 7. So those players are already looking at the Aruba trip coming up here next week. The Eagles, I think the Eagles are going to run right through this team. They're going to take their week off, their bye week, and then come back and see what the heck happens after that. But you're absolutely right. You know, Sean Payton planted that seed with that commentary, which was very unprofessional of him. Early in the preseason, they circled the calendar going out to Denver.
Yeah.
And Breece Hall has this incredible 170 some odd yard game this past week. I agree with you, Jody. I think from a Jet point of view, and they play much better on the road, by the way, than they do at the Meadowlands. I think the Eagles, not that they'll have an easy time of it because the Jets defense in itself is pretty good, but when they put a little pressure on Zach Wilson, then things could turn ugly early Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and I'm going under 170 on Breece Hall with the Eagles. They're a little bit better. You know, typically, it's interesting Jody brings that up. Typically, I would say this is a letdown game for the Eagles.
Eagles, right.
Coming in at 5-0, Miami on the horizon as the most explosive offense in the league, getting all the hype. Maybe look past this game, but they don't do that. That's where I give Nick Sirianni the most credit. I think people get too bogged down in the X's and O's. I think good coaches are more good managers of people, and they keep guys on the same page. And they're able to create, I hate that word, but culture, since there's no better word. And you brought up the leadership of this team. They don't really have letdown games. They struggle at points during games, but they're pretty locked in for the most part.
And it's MetLife Stadium. Let's face it. There's something about this building. When the Eagles go, even with Gardner Minshew the last time they were able to beat the Jets.
That's Gardner's best
that
game.
Was Gardner's big highlight reel.
Yeah.
I can see him and his dad right
Walked
now.
in the office and said, "Hey, am I the starting quarterback?" That's how well he played.
So the Eagles play well at MetLife Stadium, regardless of what color the facade is, whether they have the green lights or the blue lights on, which I think is a joke, by the way.
Yeah, they should leave it gray. It's such a great place. It's such a great
Boston
place.
Scott may think it's a giant game, so look out for Boston Scott this week to have a big game one way or the other.
Ooh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Nah, he's Giants. Nah, he's
Boston Stadium.
Well, last time against the Jets, he had a big game against the Jets.
Yeah, but it's not. It's all DeAndre's healthy. Yeah, he's not going to get the opportunity, I don't think, unfortunately. But the Giants, they might work something in for Boston.
Look out for a kickoff return for something from Boston Scott.
I predicted now for a couple weeks and been wrong. So I'll go there again. I do it with tongue half implanted in cheek, not really meaning it, but interested by it. When are we going to get the first, but Rashad Penny is looking good in practice, quote, out of Nick Sirianni? Because he did that last year with Trey Sermon. Yeah, I know he's not playing, but man, does he look good in practice. Man, is he busted in practice. And John, I thought of you yesterday listening to Sirianni press conference. The intensity that they practice with. He really went there. The intensity that they practice with in the 25-minute walkthroughs that they have. But they're intense 25-minute walkthroughs. When are we going to get to Rashad Penny's looking great in practice, even though he's on that inactive list every week? When is that quote coming from Coach Sirianni, Ricardo?
That could be coming soon. Look, I'm still perplexed at the why. I haven't heard a reason where I can put my finger on it. All right, that makes sense. What have you guys deciphered from what you've heard about why Penny hasn't been able to play this year? Why can't he get on the field?
He's the fourth running back.
Yeah.
And they're only.
I think we were talking about the roster. He might be one of those guys that has to go.
Not impossible.
And they signed a kid, Bryant Koback, a couple weeks ago. Was on the practice squad. They worked out a kid, I forget his name, last week. If they like them and they're comfortable with that, and they need a spot for Mann or Dean or, as you mentioned, they only need 2 spots. Roby, they can hold off a couple weeks. He'd be one of my first candidates to go. Goodrich would be first, then Penny, and then I don't even know who number 3 would be. But those would be the first 2 names that crop up for me: Mario Goodrich and Rashad Penny. Now Mario's played, and he's played poorly. But I got to tell you, even Mario Goodrich, that poor kid. He gets 2 opportunities. The first one was against Justin Jefferson, and the second one was against Cooper Kupp. I'm not sure he just flat out can't play. I mean, that's difficult. That's difficult.
Those are tough assignments.
Yeah.
Those are tough assignments.
Yeah. But life's not fair, Ricky.
All right, Ricky, I'm going to ask you one more before we let you run.
All right.
Is there a chance this week, if they're in this tremendously competitive practice they're going to have this week,
the intense practice,
practice, high impact practice they're going to have, that if one of their wide receivers ends up getting hurt, turns an ankle, whatever else, maybe his name's Quez Watkins, will they elevate Devin Allen from the practice squad? Because apparently to Coach Sirianni, the threat of Quez Watkins stretching the defense gets A.J. Smith and Devontae the 2 Eagle wide receivers I'm referring to, open because of the threat of Quez Watkins and his speed. It is a key component, apparently, to the Eagles' passing game. Well, if you got to have speed as your third wide receiver, I nominate Devin Allen. I'll tell you right now, I think he beat Quez Watkins in a race. So if that's what gets the other wide receivers open, will Devin Allen get a chance if a wide receiver spot opens for the Eagles this week?
It would not shock me one bit. And Quez Watkins, who, by the way, got as many targets as Devontae Smith this past week, that's going to have to be addressed at some point, gentlemen. I'm not convinced about Quez Watkins. John, could he be one of those guys that you move off
to
of?
potentially cut? No shot. They love him.
No.
Sirianni's going to adopt him. He defends him to no end, even though he doesn't deserve it.
I know a lot of people would like that, but no, that's not happening.
I'd love to see Devin out. I thought, when was it a preseason game that he had that great kick?
Yeah. Well, I think Devin, I get where we were talking about this early. So, I mean, Devin, obviously, he might be the fastest player in the NFL. I don't think he's, he hasn't played receiver for 6 years, and you could argue he didn't really play receiver at Oregon. I mean, he can't do the other stuff, but from the standpoint, they elevated him once to be the kick returner. But yeah, that's a perfect example. I think that was Cleveland. You can't just let people run down the field because he ran by people when he scored a touchdown. And that's sort of highlights why they want that kind of speed on the field. And I think it's great that Devin has been an Olympic hurdler, and now he's in the books as an official NFL player because he was elevated for that one game and he got the kickoff return. I think that's pretty cool, but I don't think he's ever going to be a big
Who's
part
the
of
better track star, a.k.a. receiver? The Ronaldo Nehemiah experiment years ago with the 49ers, or Devin Allen as an Eagle?
Well, I think probably Devin's a better receiver.
I was going to say
he played in college.
Ronaldo got on the field and actually did make plays.
Yeah, he did play. So you would have to say Ronaldo certainly did more in the NFL. I mean, I'll go Bob Hayes. Can I go Bob Hayes?
Ooh, that's another good one. Bob Hayes was phenomenal back in the day.
Yeah.
All right, Ricardo, we're running out of time. We're going to let you go. Just go ahead. It's like rip the Band-Aid off.
27-17, Birds.
Yeah, that's what
Ooh,
I figured.
That's closer than
I got to go.
but over under 3 sacks, Jalen Carter on Zach Wilson.
Oh, you heard the updated injury news yesterday, right?
No.
Elijah Vera Tucker done for the year.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. I did hear about that. Oh, that's even worse.
The only guy who had a chance, maybe on the Jets interior, to keep Jalen Carter off
or Zach
Wilson's back.
Or Zach Wilson.
It could be ugly on Sunday, and I'll be there watching it, crying. Ricky Ricardo, always a pleasure, our friend. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Muchas
Ricky.
gracias, amigo.
I'll be there too, gentlemen. It's going to rain, by the way. Forecast is for rain now on both Saturday.
Of course, because I got to
and
drive up the
Sunday.
turnpike. There's always some kind of
slow track, but I will see you there, boys, and it's always a pleasure.
Ricardo,
Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you very much. Ricky Ricardo from the
It's
Eagles.
always bad weather when I go up or come down. Either coming back from that game or going up. It's always bad weather.
Yeah, your percentage of doing it might be higher than mine, but overall number of times up and down the turnpike in bad weather, I win that one because I did it for years on a day in, day out basis, 6 days a week. So I know how to navigate bad weather on the New Jersey Turnpike. And if we got to do it again on Sunday, so be it. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Mac and Mac coming back to put a bow on the show.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grossinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, Mac and Mac running out of time. Don't forget Bill Colarulo coming up here next on the JAKIB Media YouTube station after we put the bow on this show. Got to give a nod here. John McMullen, you did not have the quote of the day on the show. Jody McDonald did not have the quote of the day. Ricky Ricardo did not have quote of the day. Got to give it to one of our streamers here, Kevin Savard. I recognize Kevin. He's not one of the regular guys who are every single day commenting and reaching out to us, and we thank you all. Appreciate it greatly. You guys, if nothing else, you entertain me and John, or tick off me and John at some point during the show, and we thank you for that. While you're at it, while we're showing you love, you can show us love and hit the like button as you get out the door here on today's show. Did you see this one from Kevin Savard? Wilson will be on his back more on Sunday than he is with the MILFs. Now, I think most people understand where he's going with that. He did perfectly without going into great detail of what the MILFs mean. But if you're any kind of a football fan, you know exactly what he's referring to. And he's dead on right. I think the Eagles are going to be making Zach Wilson's life heck on Sunday with their pass rush having jacked it up a couple notches this week, and the Jets' offensive line being a mess.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Eagles are going to win this game and win it pretty easily. Zach Wilson playing a little bit better, but there's some issues there. Moms, I like to. And you can insert the rest.
That's why I give Kevin Savard.
Zach is somewhat famous for it, but he struggled, and he's facing the best defensive front in football. We talked a lot about Jalen Carter, but I did want to get more into that secondary tomorrow. We probably got too bogged down in the Quez Watkins talk, but I'm concerned about that secondary. I don't in the middle of the field, and not only back seven, I should say, more than, because I like the corners. I like the outside corners. It's more the linebackers. It's more the middle of the field. And somebody's gonna, and Miami would be obviously the most notable if they can hold up in protection. And I thought the Rams, I think that's what's lost in this game. For whatever reason, Sean McVay went away from it. I don't know why. I didn't see any of the Rams people ask him why. Obviously, I can't get into his press conference because I got to go to Nick in the locker room and Jalen. I don't know why they went away with it, but it was an issue early in the game. And I don't think the answer is necessarily on the roster, but you can't have a star at every position. You can't.
Right, but you can have better guys in depth, and a guy whose name will come up tomorrow if we're going to do more about the secondary, Keely Ringo. Really? Ricks is stepping in, getting some reps before Keely Ringo is? That's a fourth-round draft pick. I know he's the gunner on special teams, but that does not bode well. I know it's very early, 5 games into his career, but if he were being another player with experience, where the guy who was stepping up over him on what we thought was the depth chart for it's an undrafted rookie who is getting snaps ahead of him. That's not a good sign. But we'll save that for tomorrow. Be back here, mañana, with Mac and Mac on Birds 365 in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.